Tēnā koutou katoa, no America ho no te timatanga, ko te tai ta toku manga, ko waitaki toku awa, ko otatahi toka kainga inai nei, he roia toku tunga mahi o Perryfield Lawyers, ko Stephen mo toku ingoa, no reira namihi kia koutou katoa. Hey, look, it's really great to welcome so many of you to this call. It's the first one of the new year, 2022, although I don't know about all of you, but the memories of summer are fading a little bit. So like I said in the invite, let's grasp as much of them as we can while they're still fresh. Just to introduce behind me, there's some people, so I'm not sure if they're in the screen, but this is Michael, who I work with a lot, and also Sophie, she's over here. So yeah, we can give a wave to them because behind the scenes, we've got a whole team. And then Aislinn is here as well. She's kind of coming in the door. So just to have introduced them as well. What we're going to do this afternoon is hear from some people about a little bit of their journey. But I know that there's some of you who are new to these calls, so bear with me if you're regulars. But I like to explain a little bit of the background, which is that in the first lockdown, right in the very first week, I had some email exchanges with Mark Pare from the Hillary Institute. And he was saying, oh, we should gather some people and just see how everybody's doing. And so I put a word out, and all of a sudden there was like 30, 40 people gathering. And so that became a weekly thing during the very, very first lockdown. And then it's kind of morphed over time. Last year, they were happening every 2 months. And this year, I've decided to host them the last Friday of each month. So I think that's going to be the rhythm that we're trying to get into. So I've sent out meeting invites to all of you. And if you accept them, that accepts them for the whole year, hopefully. And the intention here is that each of us probably comes from a slightly different sector or a different background. And my hope is that by gathering us together as purpose-driven people, there will be accountants who end up meeting mental health advocates, who meet charities working with sports, who meet entrepreneurs who are capital raising. It's a real wide mix of people who join these calls, but all of us, I think, have impact and purpose often motivating us in what we're doing. So let's try to be a bit more transparent, open with each other, share our journeys as we go along. So that's the intention behind them. So each time the format is very similar. I usually ask 1 or 2 people to share a little bit about what they're involved in, and then send us all to breakout rooms where you get a chance to actually talk with real humans. Because I'm keen that Zoom, it can be very, screen heavy. So having the breakout rooms is an important part to try to help build community among us. And these calls are recorded, so I'm going to send it out later. If you know people would be interested, feel free to forward it on. There's about 600 people on the email list, and so lots of people watch this afterwards. So if you're doing that, welcome to this recording. And I just wanted to as well mention, I'd arranged 3 people to speak today. Unfortunately, Michelle has just been at the COVID testing center, and she has said that she's not able to join us. So I've said, well, why don't you come on the next call? I think it's really good what she's doing. She's not trying to join despite feeling unwell and despite getting the test. So I really like and admire the behavior that she's modeling, that, if you're not feeling well, don't try to continue on as if everything's fine. So I think we can all learn from her. And I appreciated her not joining us for that reason, because this is an unusual time. And then Kay Marie Dunn, she may be able to join us a bit later, but I'm not sure. So in the meantime, I've asked somebody else to join, James Stewart. So he's going to be able to share. And we have Tim here as well. So it's awesome that you're here, Tim, from the Funding Network. Just before we dive into those people talking about what they're doing, I wanted to mention, sometimes I hear people saying that there's not that many resources for the sector about impact. So I wanted to draw your attention to the fact that there are some really good materials out there. So the IOD now has an impact-focused section on their website, which has some great materials. There's a new initiative looking at community governance, and they're coming out with programs and materials and ways that each of us can get involved. And then we're trying to contribute in different ways. So we've put out this Charities in New Zealand, a legal handbook, which is like a free download, and continuing to do the Seeds podcast, trying to spotlight people's stories. So this week was episode 295. So if you're ever short of material, I welcome emails saying I'm looking for something to read, because there's a lot out there. Happy to direct you to things. So what we're going to do now is hear a little bit from different people in the sector. So Tim, I'm wondering if you could start us off. And I know that you wear multiple hats, so maybe you could explain a few of the hats and then which hat you're wearing, telling us about the funding network today. Thanks for that.
Kia ora. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Snowden te monga, ko Seven te awa, Pare e taku marae, he tangata tariti aho, ko England, ko Scotland ngā iwi, ko Yasmin tōku wahine toa, ko Hadika taku tamahine, ko Tim taku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Hi, I'm Tim, and yeah, I wear a few hats. I know Stephen and a couple of others on this call through the EHF, the Edmund Hillary Fellowship. And my wife and I we came here in 2019 from Sri Lanka, where my wife and I run Tea Leaf Trust, which is a project focused on young people and helping them to escape the extreme poverty of the tea estates, which is a legacy of my ancestors and through my British heritage. So that's the thing that I've been doing, and that's the heartbeat, I guess, of what I do. And then in Aotearoa, New Zealand, I'm part of the Inclusive Aotearoa Collective Tahona. So we are putting together a national strategy for belonging and inclusion following, was founded by Anjum Rahman after the March 15th mosque attacks. And we're currently going to be running a belonging and inclusion hui on Zoom, but probably 40 or 50 conversations this year to follow on from the ones they did in 2020. And if anybody would be like to be part of those conversations, particularly white men. We can't get white men into the room. So particularly if you're a white man or you have links with groups with white men in, please throw me a line and I'd love to chat to you about what those conversations look like. They're really non-threatening. Us white men don't need to be too fragile about it. It's quite an interesting conversation. And then the one I'm here to talk about today is that I also am the manager of the Funding Network New Zealand. And the Funding Network New Zealand is there to support small grassroots Kiwi charities. And its history comes from the UK, where it was founded in 2010. And really what historically it's been is you get 120 people in a room who want a different kind of evening out and want to hear from and connect with grassroots charities with the intention of giving to support their work. And so those 120 people listen to 3 structured presentations from different charities. And then the charities exit stage right, the pledge master comes on, and in the next 45 minutes, normally around $15,000 to $20,000 has been raised from that audience to support each of those charities. Now, I through Tea Leaf Trust, I pitched to the Funding Network in the UK a few times. And so when I was moving here, I reached out to the Funding Network here and said, can I come and move some chairs for you? Because I really like what you do. And they had a vacancy. And I joined just before the lockdown, which of course made it impossible to run that model. But it gave us an opportunity to be really cool with everybody else and pivot, because that was the thing that we all enjoyed doing, wasn't it, in 2020? And so we pivoted Very quickly in the first lockdown, we got, I was having a chat with Lani Evans from the Vodafone Community Foundation, and she suggested that we asked 3 foundations to identify charities that they were comfortable or had previously supported, who were on the front line of that initial kind of COVID response and seeing increased need from their communities. And so we did that, and Perpetual Guardian, Vodafone Community Foundation and Foundation North came on board. And within 3 weeks, we just ran an online version of the funding network, and we raised around 20,000 for each of those charities to do an immediate COVID response. Following that, we then moved into what we realized was, just from some of the stuff that was going on that I was watching during the crowdfunder, is that these 3 charities didn't actually know how to put together a crowdfunding campaign, and they were missing some tricks. They weren't, for example, somebody hadn't even thought that maybe their trustees might be good people to engage with getting the message out about the fundraiser, or that their email list could be supplemented and backed up by some of their social media, and they didn't really know how to make the ask. So there are lots of different things. So we started putting together a training program that ran in front of the crowdfunder. And we called these events Help from Home events, and we've run 5 of them since the middle of 2020 until November last year. And we raised about $250,000 for the 16 charities that took part, because we had about three at each time, and one group of 4. And one of the things we began to notice was there was increasing numbers of charities registering as new charities. So increasing number of new charities registering. So August last year, I heard that 1,800 new charities registered, and New Zealand already has the highest number of charities per capita in the world, at around 27,000. I'm glad Michelle's not here, because she'd be shouting in the background the exact number, because she knows it off the top of her head, but it's over 27,000. And at the same time, we did help 10 charities last year, so 16 in total, 10 last year, but we had over 50 applications. And so what we're doing now, which I guess is kind of the focus of this, is we've partnered up with Give a Little, and we're running what we're calling the Generosity Generator. It was initially going to be called the Generosity Super Spreader, but then Omicron came, and we felt that probably wasn't the right thing to call it. So it's the Generosity Generator, and we were aiming at 30 charities initially, and we were going to put in a really structured, we are putting in a really structured training program. Thank you very much, Francesca. And a really structured program around how to tell your story and create a 60 to 90 second campaign launch video, how to do your network mapping, your do's and don'ts of crowdfunders, and then particularly around social media audit, and a social media kind of calendar. And then it rolls on, and from April the 1st to April the 15th, those charities are going to run a campaign that we get behind, and we push out through our social media and PR links. And we got an overwhelming response, and we got 55 applications, of whom we've been able to, under our aims and objects, we've been able to take 49. And so we've decided to jump straight in and help all 49. And yeah, I mean, so the charities all get, we've been looking for incentives, and Michelle, I was give Michelle a shout out in case she's watching, because the Fundraising Institute of New Zealand have offered all of those charities membership and additional mentoring for fundraising, and some other incentives that we're going to be telling the charities about before we tell you about. And but they've really got behind it. And so what we're trying to do is run this 2-week crowdfunder with these 49 charities. But really the dual aim is give them the knowledge that they need to be able to run that on a regular basis, an annual basis, because the traditional methods of fundraising for lots of small charities have been extremely disrupted. You know, that sausage sizzler, you know, those sausages are still in the freezer, and, you know, the quizzes and the tin shakes have all been significantly disrupted. There's more charities going for around the same pot of money. And so with some simple skill sets that we believe we can teach that are pretty intuitive, and once you know them, they're very easy to implement, we can help small charities diversify their funding streams. And the ask, because I've been told that there's an ask, which I didn't realize, is if anybody wants to jump on board in terms of helping us to find some incentives or shouting about the work. If you follow us on Facebook and Instagram with the Funding Network New Zealand, TFNNZ, I'd love to, if you've got a skill set that small charities need and you'd like to donate a couple of hours of your time, you know, then please get in touch, because what we're trying to do is put together a raft of things that will be really useful and supportive for the small charity. It can be cash if you want to chuck some hard cash into a match funding pot so that their communities can unlock it and be worth double. Then I'm not going to turn away any dollars. But really, it's a broad range of incentives. If you've got some skills, if you're an accountant and you might be able to do their end of year return for them pro bono, that would be an amazing thing. And we can put together a raft of prizes just to incentivize them, because running a 2-week crowdfunder, and it's a strange point to end on, but running a 2-week crowdfunder it's an emotional roller coaster. It's much like kind of Toy Story, in that it's just got loads of highs and lows. And so anything we can do to, you know, to keep them high and keep them moving would be greatly appreciated. And that's it, Stephen. I hope that's not too long.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you, Tim. I really appreciate it. And the point of these calls is that sometimes we don't know what else is going on within the sector or the impact sector. That's the phrase that I like to use, but it's really helpful to hear about that and what you're involved in. I'm just curious, you know, of those charities who've applied, would you say, how would you characterize them? Like, are they one person operating, or some of them bigger, or is it just completely varied amongst, so different from one to the other? Is it possible to categorize?
I mean, yeah, most of them would be under 100,000 a year, most of them. We've turned one down. We had one that had a target of $10 million, but had $100 in the bank account. So we had to have a little conversation and kind of agree that this might not be the right time. So yeah, normally around 100,000 and lower, but our cap is $1 million. An average of $1 million over the last 3 years, because we know that there's been some flux. But yeah, out of the 49, I'd say probably around 30 sit under that 100, 150,000 mark. And there's a definite, the charities that have a designated fundraiser are far and few between. Like these are one person or totally voluntary organizations who are looking for the hacks to enable them to do a bit more of their work.
That's great. And in terms of the timing of it, it sounds like you're kind of at a point in the program. Is it going to be a yearly thing, or every 6 months looking for more people, or not sure at the moment?
Well, this is a kind of pilot. We're jumping right in with that, you know, but I would expect, we've had a lot of approaches of people asking if we're running it again from charities who have, it's not been quite the right time for them this time for one reason or another. So I would think we'd hopefully do another one at the end, towards the end of the year, like October maybe.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, if anybody has questions, the chat function in Zoom, maybe Tim, if you're willing to stay on the call, throw
Absolutely.
a chat, a question to Tim and ask him. But actually, maybe Tim, you can put in the website link, and then people can kind of find it, do the social media following, etc. I think that might be helpful for people to do. And it looks like people are in the chat already reaching out to you, so that's cool. So yeah, the point of the call is that I love to hear about different things going on across the country, and we can know that this is happening and other things are happening. So turning from kind of more of a charity focused initiative. James is kindly stepped in because Michelle isn't able to join us at the last minute. But fortunately, I know James well enough where I didn't feel bad asking him. James, we'd love to hear a little bit of an update from you, the hats that you're wearing maybe, and then I think people would be interested in Gemelli Consulting. The latest episode of Seeds podcast is with you. So I just recently downloaded your whole life history and really appreciated learning about why you do what you do. But if we want to use labels, then Gemelli would be more on the social enterprise side of the equation in terms of operating as a business that has impact and has purpose, but also benefiting others. So I'm sure people are curious to learn a bit more about you and what you're up to. I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Stephen. Kia ora, everyone. I thought maybe just a really sensible way is just to play the next hour and 14 or the hour and 14-minute podcast, if everyone's okay with that. Just going to be an efficient use of everyone's time. No, I won't put you through that. That's up to you if you want to. Thanks for the opportunity. I'm lucky enough to be based down in Christchurch with Stephen and a bunch of other rockstar social enterprise gurus and impact investment people. And it's great to see familiar faces on the call too. So in a nutshell, Stephen summed it up quite nicely. We work on the commercial and financial side of both projects that impact-based organisations are undertaking, and also in impact-based organisations and helping them organisationally and run more efficiently and effectively and things like that. So sort of on a corporate lens. So our team are all based, sort of from a Big Four consulting background. We've got a team of 6 of us here, and in our sort of value add is really helping organisations that are purpose-based and are looking to have impact in their community. We help them with financial feasibilities, business cases, options analysis, those sorts of things. So if you're a Fonterra or a Synlait or anyone like that on the call, there's a bunch of really good Big Four consulting firms that will help you out and do really good case studies and feasibilities and business cases for that. We really focus on those organisations that need to operate in a financially sustainable way, and obviously their projects have to be financially feasible, otherwise they won't unlock investment. But the core purpose of our clients' work is around unlocking environmental outcomes, social outcomes, economic outcomes, potentially for tourism and employment and things like that. So that's the space that we love to play in. All of our clients are impact first social enterprise clients. So we work with community housing providers, we work for local and regional councils and some of their environmental and housing projects that they're doing. We work with a lot of faith-based groups and community groups as they look to build social enterprise facilities in their communities that might have a medical hub to generate some revenue and do social good, but they might have a community space in their place as well. And we all know that community rooms and things like that don't generate a 5 or a 9% return, so they don't pay for themselves. They deliberately lose money. But if you can put blended income generating assets with them and ring fence those assets, then you could get something that's potentially financially feasible and bankable. So that's the space that we work in. We typically don't get called in to do the easy projects. They stand alone for themselves, and anyone with a Excel spreadsheet back of the envelope can figure out if those are financially viable or not. We get pulled into the really challenging ones, and that's what we thrive on, is taking projects that probably wouldn't go ahead and trying to find creative financing solutions in order to bring them to pass. So we run the numbers, but really our core value add is looking at how can we get creative with finance? How can we bring on impact investors? How can we apportion risk differently through the project lifecycle in order to make the projects attractive to lenders? So yeah, we do a lot of work with social housing, affordable housing. We've just released a white paper with Stephen Moe's Seeds podcast and Habitat for Humanity about how the build to rent housing product can actually help alleviate the housing crisis now, but also get people into their own home on a long-term basis. So that's linked in Stephen Moe's podcast, and we've got some LinkedIn content going up on that early next week. So if that's your jam, feel free to have a look into that. It's different, it's out of the box, but we need to think differently, and we need to think out of the box if we're going to solve the housing crisis. So we love to think innovatively in those sorts of spaces with land leases and community land trusts and helping in that sort of space there. So that's us in a nutshell in terms of what we do. So our why is really twofold. Essentially, you guys from the community sector will know that, you probably don't have 50 grand sitting in the bank account to do a feasibility study or a business case for your project sitting there, which is probably what a PwC or an EY is going to charge you, when you're looking at average charge out rates of $400 or $600 an hour. That model's really great if you if you're a partner in a PwC or a Big Four and you want to get the new Maserati that comes out next year. Our team has sort of sacrificed that and foregone that. And that's not what gets us out of bed. So our rates are lower because we want to unlock projects that wouldn't be unlocked otherwise. So that's really what gets us out of bed. The other piece to our mahi is really around trying to live and breathe that social enterprise space as well. So Gemelli is a social enterprise. We're just about to hit send on our B Corp status as well. So we're set up as a social enterprise. We give away 100% of our profits to both Habitat for Humanity International, where they build homes in Nepal and Tonga. So just for your reference, you can build a house in Tonga or Nepal for $3.5 grand. So when my wife and I were thinking about the company that we run, do we run it for profit and extract money out each year and pay down the mortgage faster and have overseas holidays and things like that? That didn't really spin our wheels. But being able to take $3.5 grand, lots of profit out, and build a house in Nepal, that is something that's intergenerational and impactful from our perspective. So we support Habitat with their work, and we also partner with Kids Can, who are just doing phenomenal work, as I'm sure you're all aware. We're just on a supporters call this morning with them. And, my white middle-class privileged life doesn't expose me to the coalface that they live and breathe, and hearing their stories about, 15 people living in a 3-bedroom home and kids not being able to wash for a couple of days because they can't get to the bathroom in the morning, head lice spreading through as a result, not being able to afford head lice medications and treatments. And so they use petrol or they shave their head because that's the option they've got, because stuff in the supermarket's gone up over the last year. So that stuff isn't my reality, and that's my privilege. And so that's part of what we get out of bed for in the morning, is to really try and have an impact in that space with our profits as a company. So one of my hobby horses and soapboxes is working with other business owners who are doing really great work in whatever sector they're in, and are just running a standard for-profit business, and trying to get them to share the love and share the profits and have impact with the profits that they make, as well as potentially the work that they do in that space. So that's the 6-minute version as opposed to the hour and 14-minute version. So happy to answer any questions or take your lead, Mr. Moe.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. If anybody does have a question, I might open it up for people to ask you a question. So be thinking in your mind. But James, I think the reason I love these calls actually is it's just such a nice chance to hear from other people who are doing work out there, because the way I view it is that each of us, particularly if you're on this call, it's like we're on a train, on a track going this direction, and it's a lot of work to keep that train going. And sometimes it's really healthy to look around and realize that there's other trains on slightly different tracks, but we're all kind of heading in the same direction. So I get really encouraged when I hear your story, because I look at the work that you're doing and it's really valuable. So thank you for sharing. And on the podcast, the bit that I loved was the fact that I think you were like 21 years old or something, and you moved to Australia and you were asked a very confronting question, which was, what will you do with your privilege? And up until that point, it had been kind of like, well, I'll get a corporate type job and I'll get a house and I'll, the Western model of success, quote, success. And that question forced you to then look inside, didn't it? And they actually, I think, said, if it's a stroke of fortune that you happen to have been born in Christchurch to a middle-class family, if you'd been born in a very poor country overseas, what would that version of yourself say back to you, the privileged person born in Christchurch? So it's just a really powerful way that you're able to share your story. And I think there's a lot that I certainly am challenged by. So thank you.
My pleasure.
Does anybody have any questions for James? I'd like to open it up, actually. So. Well, see, you stunned them. If people have questions, they can put it in the chat. And I've put a link to that white paper that you just come out with. So that's another cool initiative people can have a look at. So what the purpose of the call, hopefully you've now downloaded what's happening from 2 different people. I'm just having a look. I'm not sure if Kay Marie is able to join us. So I might have to defer her to the next time. She said she might be running late, but that's fine. We can hear from her next time. What I'd like to do next is divide you up into little breakout rooms. So it's a chance to talk with somebody else about what you're doing, what you're seeing. So I might send you to that. I realize time commitments mean some of you need to drop off and go do other things. So thank you for all of the people who've joined up until this point. And I guess my ask would be, I'm trying to build this sort of a community that reaches across sectors and gets people encouraged about what they're doing and learning about other parts of our society. And I view it under the umbrella of impact. So I want charities to be here. I also want for-profit companies to be here. Like, I think we need to get out of the silos that traditionally would say, well, that's a call only for this particular subset, So to me, it's all about impact. So my ask from each of you is, I'm sure you know people who would be interested in coming along. Feel free to pass on the information, and I'm happy to add people to the email list. And I can definitely recommend that interview with James. I think it was probably in the top 10 of the ones that I've done in terms of, we just went all over the place, but really deep, talking about purpose and work and why we do what we do. So thank you. All right, so what we're going to do is send you to breakout rooms. So if you'd like to drop off now, that's totally fine. Go ahead. But if you'd like to stay and have a chat, it's going to be about 10 minutes probably. And then we'll all come back together and each group can kind of give a summary of whatever you talked about, or could be what you're seeing, what you're involved in. I don't really mind. Just have a chat, a chance to connect with others. So I will send you to a couple rooms. All right, looks like you're all back. Love technology. What we'll do is run around, maybe, I think there was 5 groups in the end. Some of you had 4, some of you had 5. And I guess, was there any theme that emerged from your group, or anything you appreciated about hearing from other people? I was reflecting as you were all in the breakouts that this is actually an important part of the call, is that we can connect with each other and build community. So it's not a tag on or an afterthought after we hear from some inspiring speakers, because each of you, I'm looking at the names, like I think I know pretty much all of you, and each of you are doing amazing things. So I hope that that was the vibe that you picked up on in your little rooms. Does any room, a representative of a room, like to say anything you talked about or stood out for you?
Sure, I'll feed in. Hi, Stephen.
Go for it. Wonderful.
So we had our room theme was probably impact investing, actually, which you'll be delighted to hear about. But more, so we had Paul from Community Finance and Rebecca Mason and Tim and Ellie, and we Paul's issue was that he didn't see enough large philanthropic funders that were open to impact investing out of their capital budget rather than their grant budget. And Rebecca talked about from an iwi perspective. She's on a couple of commercial and charitable iwi boards who have been embracing that for years. And yes, so I think we probably agreed that we hoped things would improve.
Great, sounds like a good discussion. I did get some feedback once, now a couple months ago, where 2 people had been sent to breakouts and then they actually continued conversations afterwards, and then they actually did something, which if that ever happens for any of you, please feed it back, because sometimes it's a lonely experience to organize this stuff. And it's really encouraging when I hear like, oh, we started a new thing. So it's awesome. Anyone else like to share?
I'm happy to, Stephen, from our little group. So I'm Tim, I'm from Well Foundation. We actually just spent the time talking about our own charitable or social enterprise interests, and everybody was actually just really engaged in understanding what people's passions were and why we came together and engaged us with groups. So we had a very diverse group where we actually had Francesca from the Charities Commission. So the connection there with Sarah, who's I think maybe a year into establishing a new charity called Project Employ, working in the disability employment space. So Francesca had actually probably registered Sarah's charity for her. So nice we touch point there. And Dean as a long-term, I guess it is a for-purpose organisation, Global HQ and Agri HQ. So just hearing about his long-term passion, caring enough to not let a business be sold to someone that didn't have a compatibility with his societal outcome lens, and buying that back, and continuing to drive outcomes with a really committed team. So just hearing that diverse range of stories, now it's echoing what you're saying, Stephen, around the value of just coming together and understanding the great work people are doing out there.
That's great, thank you. Anyone else like to share?
Yeah, Stephen, Andrew Ball from Springboard Trust, one of Ali's colleagues, and new first-time caller. I'd like to say long-time listener, but I'm new to the for impact space, so this is all new for me. We had a really interesting group, and Dennis noted that it was the first time he's been in a breakout group with a bunch of guys. It was all guys. But we had Jordan from Charities Services as well, which was really interesting to hear about, the emphasis Charity Services is placing on not just compliance, but around that support and creating the right environment, or empowering organisations to be the best they can be. That was really fascinating to hear that slant. And we talked a little bit around the challenges, and in particular, I was talking about it as well, but Dennis as well. Yeah, the different experiences we're having with funding. Some organisations are experiencing an upturn in funding because of the world we're in at the moment, people making different choices. Others are experiencing some increased challenges with funding at the moment, because the traditional funders are looking to spread their impact further afield than they perhaps have had previously, and so some challenges talking about there. And and it was really nice just to have a mix of people who are new to this group, and also some experienced hands, and talking about what we can expect going forward and what benefit this brings. So that was our experience as a group.
That's great. I'd love to hear those topics and themes. That's awesome. Anyone else?
I'll go. Kia ora everyone, I'm Karen, I'm from the Whakatane District Council. We had an all-girl power group, and that was quite lovely actually. So we had Papa and Sarah and Jen on our group. We talked about having to fund your own position, the challenges of having to raise funds for your own job, and that was interesting. We also talked about journey that a couple of the groups that we were representing were going on for co-leadership under the treaty. And we had a bit of a chat about a project that is happening with the Whakatane Council around creating work for women in the community and social sector, along the similar lines of the work created in forestry and construction that are mostly male orientated. So it's quite an exciting little project that we're working on, and hopefully we'll get the support we need and become a pilot for the country. That was us, really. Kia ora.
That's great. Cool. Well, any other groups that haven't shared? We're getting close, and there might be one more.
It was our group, and we were half female and half men, as that seems to be a theme. And various topics came up, but one about engaging university students in understanding what is needed to make environmental and sustainability changes. And the other was how to be a te tiriti Oatangi organisation, i.e. a kind of B Corp, but in that respect. Those were two themes. I'm sure my fellow in our group can add anything else they want to.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. Thank you. And I mean, the forum here it's really meant to encourage this sort of sharing and dialogue. So you may have met somebody and thought, actually, I'd like to continue having a chat. Then just let me know if you can't find each other, because I have all your emails. I'm happy to connect points. Even while we're talking, I've had somebody, Paul was saying, oh, can you connect me to Philippa? So I've just done that, Philippa. And so it's, you know, the information is there. It's just a case of networking and connecting each other. I also want to give a shout out. So Sabiso Mashaba, you're actually joining from Botswana. And I think you said, we were talking while everyone was in the breakouts, that it's 2 a.m. Is that correct?
Definitely. Hello, everyone. Hi, Ian. I see you, my fellow cohort 8. I'm an EHF fellow here from Botswana, and I run a social enterprise known as These Hands. And basically what we do is we train communities in the humanitarian space, or indigenous community space, or rural community space, a design process that we developed with MIT D-Lab in the US. And it allows them to explore their own livelihood challenges and come up with simple, appropriate technologies that actually address these challenges. And beyond that, we further support them with pathways. So one of the pathways is supporting them to set up what we call rural innovation center spaces, where they can access tools and material for free and keep working on their projects from there. And continuously, we then connect them with students from MIT, but we're hoping when we're doing it in New Zealand, we can connect them with many of the community development students there, or engineering students, so that we create an alliance of participatory design with the students as well. There will be that technical exchange, indigenous knowledge exchange, and the likes. So listening to the topics that everybody has been talking about, similar challenges down here in Africa. Impact investing is a challenge, I guess, all over the world. But I would say, to the advantage of New Zealand, at least you have the laws getting set up, you know, your B Corp and the likes. This side, still a journey, but we found ways of doing it. And so I look forward to keep learning with you guys here as to how we can do it better. Remember, the energy is around doing more with less. So we can always do it. I believe that. So kudos to you all, and nice meeting you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think if it wasn't for COVID and border restrictions, he would already be here moving to New Zealand to continue the great work that he's doing. So that's pretty cool. And he was saying he's looking at maybe moving to Wanaka. So it's a pretty nice place to potentially end up in New Zealand. So look forward to welcoming you to New Zealand in due course. So that's pretty much it, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. I'm gonna, like I said, try to do these at the end of the month, like the final Friday. So hopefully it's in your diaries. It's pretty straightforward. If you know someone who would be good to share, or if you would like to share, then I welcome people to nominate themselves. Like, you can tell it's pretty casual. It's just sort of updating each other on what's going on in our little neck of the woods and keeping people informed and touching base. So happy to hear from you and look forward to connecting again in a month or so. And I'll send out an email with the link to the recording as well, so that you can look at bits you missed or pass it on. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.